The Higher Power of Lucky, Chapter 6, How Bridget Came. Bridget swung up the steps to the kitchen trailer, carrying 2 plastic sacks full of government surplus commodities. Even though it is only 8 o'clock, I do not want to see the temperature disintegrate, she said. If I see it only in Fahrenheit, I am not so shocked. I do not let myself know what it really means. Miles, do you want to wash your hands? No, thank you, said Miles. Lucky watched as Bridget pulled government food out of the sacks. Canned pork, canned apricots, butter, and a chunk of something orange. What's this stuff? Cheese? She asked, picking up the orangey brick-shaped thing packaged in a wax box like a milk carton. It said, United States Department of Agriculture on the wrapping. It felt soft. The last Saturday of the month, free government food got delivered to the town. You only received free government food if you had quite a small amount of money. If you had too much money, they wouldn't give any food to you. Most people in Hard Pan didn't have regular jobs, and maybe they got a check every month out of having a disability or being old or from fathers who didn't like children. But it wasn't very much. Most everyone in Hard Pan qualified for the free food. We will see, said Bridget, slitting the carton with a small knife. She sniffed the cheese. Lucky leaned in and smelled it too. Usually the kind of cheese that Bridget loved smelled like dirty socks and had to be tightly wound in saran wrap so it didn't smell up the whole fridge. This cheese had no smell at all. I do not know about this cheese, said Bridget, frowning. She cut off a small corner and held it to HMS Beagle. HMS Beagle stretched her neck forward, her black nose almost touching a piece of cheese. She studied it with her nose twitching, then sighed and turned back to her place by the door. Bridget made a pff sound, a little blast of air, and tossed a small corner of cheese in the garbage can. No wonder it is free, that cheese, she said. No one will pay for it. Miles began pounding his heels against the banquet. Lucky said you would tell me the story of how you came to Hard Pan to take care of her, he said. Bridget shrugged. You know already, Miles. I come on an airplane after Lucky's mother died. Why didn't Lucky's father take care of her himself? Asked Miles. Bridget puffed air out of her mouth in a way she did to show she thought something was ridiculous. He is, she said, in some ways, a very foolish man, Lucky's father. Miles looked at Lucky to see if she agreed with this or not. Lucky stuck her face closer to his and made big eyes at him as a way of telling him to shut up. Miles stuck his face out and made big eye back at her as a way of saying he still wanted to know if Lucky agreed that her father was foolish. Lucky said, So my father called up his first wife, who he was married to before he got married to my mother, and guess who that was? Miles stared at her. Who? He said. Bridget, said Lucky. Her? Asked Miles. He turned to Bridget, hugging his Buy More store bag to his chest. He frowned at her and then at Lucky to show he didn't want to be teased. Of course, me, said Bridget. She glanced up at a shiny metal thing like a vase on a high shelf. Lucky knew what was in it, but her mind did not like to stay thinking about it. Her brain went hopping off, like someone crossing a stream by jumping from stone to stone, quickly, so they wouldn't have time to think about slipping and falling into the water. If Bridget was married to Lucky's father, then she is Lucky's stepmother, Miles said. Lucky felt a little bit hypnotized, as if she were apart from herself and the self leaning on the sink was totally the other self. No, she said slowly, because they were married before. Lucky's father and I were married before Lucky was born, Miles. Bridget explained. Her mother, Lucille, and I did not know one another, but Lucky's father called me because he knew I would come. She shrugged. In France, I had no job. Always I want to see California. He knew I would take care of Lucky for a while. So I agree. I say to him, you buy me the ticket and I will come. I have already the flight booked, he said. You leave Paris tonight and arrive in Los Angeles tomorrow. So I fly to Los Angeles with my red silk dress and high-heeled shoes, and only my one little suitcase. What happened when you got to Los Angeles? Miles asked. Lucky knew that Miles thought LA was a terrible place where people drove around in their cars all day, from morning to night. He and Short Sammy spent hours listening to LA traffic reports on the radio. Lucky's father had rented a big American car that is waiting for me at the airport, Bridget said. I drive and drive and drive, and finally the city ends and the desert starts. Then I drive and drive and drive. Bridget air drove a car. Her hand gripped a pretend steering wheel. Until there is no more people, only desert, a lot of desert. I am a little frightened because there is too much space everywhere, and I almost drive into a cow and her little calf. Lucky said. Yes, the cow and her little calf. They are in the middle of the highway. Finally, I drive until there is no more road, only dirt streets. There is a little sign, hard pan, Pop 43, and I am sad because Lucky's mama has died, so now it is Pop 42. They never changed the sign, though, Lucky realized, but because Bridget came, it was still a true sign after all. Bridget squeezed into the banquet next to Miles. Did you find Lucky then? No. When I get out of the car, I see that it is very, very hot, as hot as today. But I had not ever been so hot in France. Bridget told the story in her excited French way, which was a way, Lucky thought, that made people listen more thoroughly. So I go up to this house and it has a glass tower on the roof. I do not know it is Captain's house. Of course, I do not know any person in America except for Lucky's father, who is in San Francisco. I am afraid to speak bad English, so I do not know what will happen. The man at the door has long gray hair, and he is wearing some kind of big shirt with a rope for a waist. His dusty leather sandals and his beard made him seem like a person from the Bible. The captain doesn't look from the Bible, said Miles. He looks normal. To me, my first day in America, he looks actually like someone who has lost his marble. Later, I discover how nice he is when he drives us back from Sierra City in his van after we return the rental car. Don't they have people like Captain in France? Asked Miles. Not exactly, said Bridget. Next, what happens is I say, Lucky? And I explain everything in French, but he does not understand. Then he says, Oh, Lucky, because I have been saying this name with my accent, the way I did before. Lucky. Okay. Then he takes me up the hill to an old metal tank with a door in the front. Short Sammy's water tank, Miles said. Yes, and Sammy comes out, but I don't know who he is. I see a tiny man with a hat like a cowboy, but a miniature cowboy. I think no one has told me America is so strange. Lucky remembered this part brilliantly because she had been there, peering out from inside Sammy's water tank house. Her first sight of Bridget reminded Lucky of the beautiful ladies on Short Sammy's calendar. Every month there was a different lady, looking very sparkly and smiley, and not wearing too many clothes. Bridget's dress fit her more like a bright red slip, except the twirly skirt gave you thoughts of dancing. Plus her blonde hair was shiny and bouncy, and her lipstick was the perfect, exact same red as her dress. Her high-heeled shoes and creamy, clean neck made Bridget look way too French, and too fancy for Hardpan. But the thing she remembered most strongly was that something had to do with her mother had happened, and she was at Short Sammy's and her mother wasn't there. Did Lucky know you were her guardian? Miles asked, smoothing the plastic of his Buy More store bag, as if soothing a cat. No, said Lucky, she wasn't yet. I was only going to stay for a short while, Bridget explained. Just until Lucky can be placed in a foster home. I promised her father that. I tell him that I must go home to France after. Bridget fanned herself with a piece of the waxed cheese carton. Miles asked, Was I born yet? Yes, said Bridget. You were a fat little boy of 3 years old then, almost a wild child, running everywhere in the town. Your grandmother is always looking for you. Bridget shrugged. I try to understand American customs, but they're so different from mine, and Lucky for a long time cannot sleep unless I am with her. She's of course very sad and missing her mama. Was I allowed to do anything I wanted? Asked Miles. He tucked the plastic sack tightly around his book. I thought it was perhaps the way of all American children to be so free, Bridget said. I wanted Lucky to have a good American foster family who is letting her be a little bit free and also giving her some discipline. Will Lucky have to go to a foster family where they make her take care of all the other little foster brothers and sisters? Miles had asked Lucky about this before. It was something he had seen on TV program. For a long time, we cannot find any foster family for Lucky. Then her father tells me all the paperwork for California will be easier if I become her guardian, especially because Lucky and we have already the same last name of Trimble. I say okay. Bridget got up and continued to put the government surplus food away, frowning at the canned pork. Lucky was thinking that even though Bridget said okay, she meant only until they did find a foster family. And if she had to take care of all the crying orphaned babies in her new foster family, that would mean leaving Hardpan. The sign that still said Pop 43 would really be wrong. But what Lucky wanted most was for that sign to stay the same forever, with no subtracting allowed.